October 2002, hundreds of young tourists enjoy a night out in tropical Bali in Indonesia. But the holiday atmosphere was torn apart when a massive explosion ripped through a packed nightclub, claiming over 200 lives. Declan Whelan grew up on the banks of Lough Derg near Drumineer, County Tipperary. He later moved to London, where he had two sons, Tom and Ed. In 2002, Jocelyn's youngest son, Ed, went on a rugby trip to Bali.
He was born in London. His mother was Thai, so he was quite cosmopolitan. He had lots of different blood in his genes, because even I've got Polish blood and Irish blood, so he was a bit of a cocktail. But very quickly, when he and his brother were old enough, I dispatched them every summer to this house, to Rinskaheen, in North Tipperary, on Lough Derg. They just loved it down here, and their grandparents were very good to them. They also began to make friends. The people who came down to Lough Derg Yacht Club in Drumineer, tremendous community on the Shannon. And Ed really took to that. So he really got a basic love of Ireland, the Irish people and the Irish way from a very early age.
Between summers spent in Ireland, Ed returned to school in England, where he did well enough to gain entry to Trinity College, Dublin.
Trinity was, I think, the time when he flowered. He flowered in so many ways. I think the thing was that he sort of realized that being an adult, there was a great big world out there, and he wanted to be part of it. With the cosmopolitan background in the life that we'd led, living in Thailand, living in England, Trinity was where he realized this was his home. So Trinity, North Tipperary, these were very important to him.
After graduating from Trinity College, Ed Whelan decided to take a gap year. His parents had separated, and his mother, Nilawan, had moved to Thailand. Ed wanted to spend time near her.
While he was in Thailand, he actually got offered a job in Hong Kong. He said, "Dad, I've had 5 interviews." My heart sank, because I thought, my goodness me, he's not going to get through all these interviews. He talks far too much, he's far too chatty, and you know, they're going to say, who is this flibbity-gibbet? But anyway, proudly, he said, I got through and he got the job. So he started to work quite serious in Hong Kong.
While he was living in Hong Kong, Ed joined a rugby club and captained a team. In October 2002, the rugby team travelled to a 10-a-side friendly tournament in the busy resort of Kuta in Bali.
I knew about it because he called me on the Friday. There was a weekend competition, and told me he'd won a bonus and that he was going down with the boys to Bali.
That same evening, Ed Whelan joined his Hong Kong teammates at the Sari Club. They looked forward to a great night out.
He made tremendous use of the location of Hong Kong. He would travel to Malaysia, to Thailand, to China. It was a great opportunity for him. And you know, his mother was always saying, oh, he should be more careful, you know, typical mother. And she was right. But I said to her, look, you can't stop him. I mean, he's irrepressible. He's young. He's in his 20s. He wants to see the world. He wants to travel. He wants to have stories about these places. He doesn't think, he doesn't see any danger.
Keith and Niamh arrived at the Sari Club at 11:15 to meet up with some friends.
It was a normal Saturday night. There was absolutely no indication that there was anything unusual happening. Keith and I, once we got our drink, we moved over and found a table. So we thought, this is great, we'll wait for the others.
Music playing, people dancing, just having a laugh really, you know.
I would think we weren't there 5 minutes when we heard a noise from outside. I can recall just looking to Keith. He was sitting beside me and saying, "What was that?"
The noise was a bomb detonated by a suicide attack in Paddy's Bar across the street. Holidaymakers from Club Sari spilled onto the road to see what had happened. Seconds later, a massive car bomb exploded right outside the club.
There was this massive explosion, bang, I don't know what it was. There was a fraction of time where I was chatting to Niamh, and then the next part I was sort of running to stand up as if I was falling the whole time, and there was rocks coming down on top of my head, and fire, and it's just chaos altogether.
The impact of it hit me immediately, and I was just flung back across the club. I was powerless to do anything except go with it. I would imagine I must have blacked out after that.
Got to my feet, I was standing outside, totally shocked. I don't know, just didn't know what was going on. Looked around, I was like, where the hell has Niamh gone to, I couldn't find her anywhere.
The force of the explosion threw Niamh across the burning room.
My next memory is waking up. I was in pain, and my initial reaction was, I'm going to die.
Keith escaped to safety, but he soon turned back to the burning building to search for Niamh.
It was like a war zone, and as I was going back in to look for Niamh, I had to step over. Bodies, no arms and no legs. It was horrible.
Both Niamh Holohan and Keith Haslam were suffering from life-threatening burns. Separately, they were taken to different hospitals in Bali. Meanwhile, the death toll quickly escalated as news spread across the world. Ed Waller's father, Jocelyn, woke up to the news in London the following morning.
I went out to get the Sunday newspapers. It was on a Sunday morning, and I saw the headline saying, "A massive bomb in Bali, many killed." And I sort of died on the spot at that point, because I knew he was there, and I knew that he would be in the thick of things. And I had a terrible premonition. I didn't read the article on the where I just drove home with a terribly empty feeling. I was terrified at that point. I loved the boy very deeply, and I was absolutely shattered.
With no word from his son, Jocelyn feared the worst.
I called his mother, who was in Chiang Mai. I had to break the news to her. She was devastated. I said, I'll meet you. You fly down to Singapore tomorrow. I'll meet you there. And we stayed together for a week. I refused to let her go to Bali because the reports coming back were of total chaos. Bits of body all over the place, burning. It was an absolute nightmare. It was a very big, nasty bomb. And I thought the last thing I want to do is to take her down there. So we sort of cried together for 4 or 5 days.
Back in Bali, rescue services and hospitals were in chaos, with few resources to deal with such a disaster. Jocelyn Waller had made contact with his son Ed's rugby club.
I knew one or two of the Hong Kong people, and I was talking to them on their phone by mobile. One particular person who was very friendly with Ed and, was very concerned, and he rang me about every 6 hours, saying, I'm really looking in. And, there wasn't any hope.
An Islamist militant group called Jemaah Islamiyah were suspected of carrying out the atrocity. The group was linked to Al-Qaeda. The death toll for the Bali bombing reached 202 young people, mostly in their 20s. Two weeks after the bombing, Ed Waller's body had still not been recovered. The Waller family organised a memorial for Ed in Drumineer, County Tipperary.
The memorial service was orchestrated by his brother, Tom. It was extraordinarily moving. Everybody came. I mean, there were 500 or 600 people flew in. All his friends were totally shocked by this event. He'd seen so much part of their lives.
Ed had the kindest of dispositions. The petty jealousies and envies that afflict most of us were totally absent in Ed. He saw no reason why the world should not be a joyous place with room for everyone. Age, colour, race, religion were never bars in Ed's world.
I think it was a mixture of tears and laughter, actually, because, you know, we all realized we had to pick ourselves up, and that was already evident. We all took consolation in each other, but laughter was beginning to come back, which Ed would have always wanted. It was sad, but, you know, it was all the start of the process of remembering him in the right way.
3 weeks after the bombing, Jocelyn heard from the British Foreign Office that they had identified Ed's body.
We'd given DNA samples and they were able to find it. Unfortunately, I know that it wasn't complete, but at least we had the body. And immediately, it was a no-brainer. I wanted him shipped back to Tipperary, to the family graveyard, not far from Drummoneer, where the 6 generations of Whalers are buried. And he would be the 7th.
The following year, members of the Islamic group Jemaah Islamiyah were tried and sentenced to death for their part in the slaughter. They claimed the bombs were in direct retaliation against the United States war in Afghanistan. They showed no remorse.
I think, you know, they wanted to be executed, so they didn't have the easy release or get out of life or whatever, you know. Would have preferred to see them rot in a prison somewhere.
It's hard to imagine that, you know, a bomb set by somebody is done deliberately to cause pain. That's a bit I don't dwell on so much, because I think if I did, yeah, it's probably more hard to accept that somebody caused this, you know. But at the same time, I'm very happy that I got out of there and that I survived it all. So I just have moved on from it. I don't dwell on the person that caused it.
Actually, Ed was the kind of person who's a total anathema to the narrow-minded, bigoted people who perpetrated this crime. And Ed was totally the epitome of somebody who stood for something completely different. He didn't care what religion people were. He came from a family that had Buddhist traits and Church of Ireland and Polish Catholicism from his grandmother. And it was brought up a Roman Catholic and practiced the religion. But he didn't, you know, he wasn't somebody who you know, wore it so strongly that it was pervasive. The important thing when something like this happens is not the death, but it's the life. That the life should continue onwards. I kind of imagined I was having a conversation with him about this. This is very real, and it may seem a little silly, but I can tell you, to me, it's very real. I was sort of talking to Ed, as it were, in my mind, and he would say to me, "Dad, you have to get on with your life, but take me with you